Hello everyone, welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph, and we will be learning today Mitzvah Hashem, Daf Lamin Gimel Amid Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Tefillin, and we begin today on Lamed Beis, Amid Beis, Siman Chaf Hey, Sif Hey. Bottom line in the Shulchan Aruch, Lamed Beis, Amid Beis. Says the macabre, Yechaveina Bahanachosam. We should have kavanaugh, we should have intent, we should have thought. Parnachosam, when we put on the tefillin. Shetzivanu HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded us lahaniach arba parshiyos elu, to put on these four parshiyos, Kadesh v'haya kiviyacha, Shema Yisrael v'haya im Shamaya. We'll discuss them more as we go on, but the Rabbeinu Shalom commanded us to put these four parshiyos, lahaniach, to put them on, lahaniach arba parshiyos elu, to put on these four sections of the Torah HaKadosha, sheyesh bahem yichud shemai, because they mention the yichud shemai, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. What are we saying when we say Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad? We're saying Hashem Echad, Hashem is one. What does it mean Hashem is one? Hashem is the only one. Hashem is singular. Hashem is the only power, the only source of everything, is the Rabbeinu Shalom. That's what it means, Hashem Echad. There is nothing outside of the Rabbeinu Shalom. There is nothing else other than the Rabbeinu Shalom. When we say in davening, L'cha Hashem ha'gedula v'ha'gevura v'ha'teferes v'ha'netzach v'ha'hoid kichol b'shamayim u'va'aretz, everything comes from the Rabbeinu Shalom. All kayach comes from the Rabbeinu Shalom. All mebshala comes from the Rabbeinu Shalom. All gedula, you see gedula, you see something that strikes you as gedula, it's from the Rabbeinu Shalom. You see kayach, well, kayach is only from the Rabbeinu Shalom. Everything, that's what it means that the Rabbeinu Shalom is singular, Hashem Echad. Everything comes from the Rabbeinu Shalom. So these four parshiyos that Hashem commanded us to put on in our tefillin, sheyesh bem yichud shmai. They speak about the achdus, the yichud of the Rabbeinu Shalom, Hashem yachid u'miyuchad, v'yitzias Mitzrayim, and they speak about Yitzias Mitzrayim. These are the four parshiyos that the Rabbeinu Shalom commanded that we should put them on. Al hazroya, we should put them on the arm, keneged halev, opposite the heart. We're putting it on the arm, close to the heart. Val harosh keneged hamoyach, and on the head by the brain. Why are we putting these four parshiyos on our bodies in these places? Kidei, so that shenizkar nisim v'nefloi sha'asa imanu, we should always remember the unbelievable miracles and wonders, the nisim v'neflois, that the Rabbeinu Shalom did for us. Shehem moirim al yichudai. Those miracles that the Rabbeinu Shalom did, they are moired, they teach al yichudai. They illustrate the singular nature of the Rabbeinu Shalom. V'ashaloi hakayach v'hamemshala, and that he is the one that has the strength, the power, and the rulership. Ba'elyonim, in the elyonim, in the heavens, ubetachtoinim, and down here on earth, lasais bahem kirtzainai, to do as he will. We speak so much about Yitzias Mitzrayim, mitzvahs that we do. Zecher l'Yitzias Mitzrayim. We make Kiddush, Shabbos, Yom Tov. We always say Zecher l'Yitzias Mitzrayim, Zecher l'Yitzias Mitzrayim. We have a mitzvah daraisa to say Kriya Shema twice a day, and we have to be mazkir Yitzias Mitzrayim. We have to mention Yitzias Mitzrayim. Why Yitzias Mitzrayim? Why do we have to keep speaking about Yitzias Mitzrayim so much? Especially when we're in Golos. Well, why do I got to speak about Yitzias Mitzrayim? I'm in Golos anyway. But you have to understand what the lesson of Yitzias Mitzrayim is. When you understand what the lesson of Yitzias Mitzrayim is, then you can understand why it's so critical that we should speak about Yitzias Mitzrayim. The reason we need to speak about Yitzias Mitzrayim is because of what the macabre just said. Shehem moirim al yichudai v'ashaloi hakayach v'ememshala b'elyonim uv'tachtoinim lasais behem kirtzoinai. What Yetzias Mitzrayim showed is what so many people in the world either do not see at all, or if they have eyes to see, they see, but they struggle to really internalize. And that is that everything is bidei shamayim. Everything happens the way it happens only because the Rabbeinu Shalom decrees that it should happen that way. Ani mamin be'emuna shalema shahabayra yisparach shemai hu bayre umanhig. I get the Lashon 100% right. Hu bayre umanig lechal haberuim. The Rabbeinu Shalom is the one who is the bayre, who creates, and is the manhig, and who controls lechal haberuim, everything that has been created. V'hu levadai asa, and he's the only one who makes, who has made v'oisa, and does make v'yaseh, and will continue to make in the future lechal hamaisim, everything that happens. Everything that happens in the world is only because of a tzivui of the Rabbeinu Shalom. The sun comes up every morning because the Rabbeinu Shalom commands it to come up. It sets every night because the Rabbeinu Shalom commands it to set. Trees grow because the Rabbeinu Shalom commands them to grow. Our bodies operate the way they operate because the Rabbeinu Shalom is mitzaveh that the body should work and that cellular respiration should take place. Everything that happens, there's no such thing as teva. What does teva mean? Nature. Teva means that the Rabbeinu Shalom established that the world should work in a certain way. But if the Rabbeinu Shalom wants to change it for any reason, at any second, at any time, the Rabbeinu Shalom will change it. That's Yetzias Mitzrayim. Yetzias Mitzrayim is the Rabbeinu Shalom showed us that for us, for Klal Yisrael, to take us out of Mitzrayim, to make us into an Ummah, to make us an Am Segula, to bring us to Har Sinai, to give us a Torah HaKadoshah. What the Rabbeinu Shalom did was, he changed everything. He made that fire and water should peacefully coexist in Barad. And when Barad was over, he made that gravity should stop. And a piece of Barad that was in the middle of falling down, when the macabre ended, did not continue to fall. It hung in midair. It made that animals, polar bears that could only live in freezing cold climates, should come to Mitzrayim during Ariv. The Rabbeinu Shalom made that animals should drop dead during Dever. He turned water into dam by dam. What the Rabbeinu Shalom showed was that there is no such thing as teva. You come to the Yam Suf and there's a yam in the way and you have to go through, no problem, the water will split. And that's because there is nothing outside of the Rabbeinu Shalom. The Rabbeinu Shalom controls everything. Hu bayre umanig umanig lechal haberuim. V'hu levadai asa v'oise v'yaseh lechal hamaisim. And this is, we put on tefillin every day because that's what's in tefillin. Tefillin is the 4 parshias, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That's the overarching concept, the singular nature of the Rabbeinu Shalom, that the Rabbeinu Shalom is the sole kayach in the universe, in everything. The universe, the Rabbeinu Shalom is not in the universe is in the Rabbeinu Shalom. That's why we call the Rabbeinu Shalom Makaim. Baruch HaMakaim Baruchu. What is Makaim? Makaim means a place. Why are we calling Hashem the place? The Rabbeinu Shalom is Mekaimai Shel Olam. If you say that the Rabbeinu Shalom is in the universe, then you're making the universe bigger than the Rabbeinu Shalom. The universe is not bigger than the Rabbeinu Shalom. The universe exists within the Rabbeinu Shalom, whatever exactly that means, beyond our pay grade. But there's nothing outside or bigger than the Rabbeinu Shalom. And Yetzias Mitzrayim. You have a Nisayon, how you're going to do a particular mitzvah? Don't have a Nisayon. Don't have a Nisayon. The Rabbeinu Shalom can change all of the Sidrei HaTeva on behalf of somebody who's being Mekayim mitzvahs. You're worried about time? I don't have time to go to a Daf Yomi Shir. The Rabbeinu Shalom will give you time. Who makes time? The Rabbeinu Shalom makes time. So you won't have traffic. So your meetings will take 50% less time. I always say, by the Rav Moshe Zechet Tzadik V'Kadosh Levracha, the Rabbeinu Shalom made that every time he opened a sefer, he opened exactly to the right spot. Why? To save him time. Because Rav Moshe used all of his time for the Ribbono Shel Olam. So the Ribbono Shel Olam didn't waste any of Rav Moshe's time. Why should he have to waste time searching for a page? You open a sefer, it went straight to the page. You're worried about time? Go to a Daf Yomi Shir. The Ribbono Shel Olam will make that when you go to a doctor, there won't be anybody else in the waiting room. Or he'll make even better. You don't have to go to a doctor. And you won't have traffic coming home. Parnasa? How am I going to go spend money on Shabbos? No problem. Don't worry, it's free. Where does the parnasa come from? It all comes from Borei Olam. It doesn't come from anywhere else. This is what we put on fillin every day, Rabbi Say. These are the 4 parshiyos she'moirim al yichudai v'arshaloi hakayach v'amemshala be'el yodim uv'tachtainim laseis bem kirtzoinoi. 3 lines down, Lam Gimel Lav Aleph in the macabre. We put on the tefillin on our arm and on our head, v'yeshabed la'kadosh baruch hu, and we subjugate to the Ribbono Shel Olam haneshama, our neshamas, shehi b'mayach. The neshama resides in the mind. Precisely what that means, I don't know. But the mind is the home of the neshama. So we subjugate the neshama to the Ribbono Shel Olam. V'gam halev, and we put the tefillin shel yad on the arm near the heart because we subjugate the leiv, the heart, shehu ikar hatayvos v'hamachashavos, because the desires and the thoughts of a person reside in the heart. Again, I don't know exactly what that means. We don't think of the heart as being the seat of emotion and the seat of thought, yet we do speak about a broken heart. We do speak about heartache. So why? Why don't we speak about mind ache? If the emotions and everything are in the mind, why don't we say, oh, mamish, he's suffering from a broken mind? Why do we say a broken heart? Comes from somewhere, right? So somehow, maybe something that we don't yet understand, our science hasn't found it yet, but somehow the heart seems to be the seat of desire, of lusts, of emotions, machshavos. So we have to subjugate the heart to Borei Olam. Ubazeh, and through this mitzvah of tefillin, by putting on the tefillin by the heart and by the mind, Yizkar Abayre, we will remember the Ribbono Shel Olam, V'yamit hana'osav, we will set our priorities straight. We will be memayit the hanois that we indulge in Olam Hazeh, because we will subjugate ourselves to the Ribbono Shel Olam and to a life of ruchnius. V'yaniach shel let's stop here for a moment. So, the macabre so far here in Sif Hey is telling us the importance of kavanaugh. We'll speak about that more in a moment, but let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Tes Vav, the last word on lamin beis, lamin beis. Yechavein b'hanachasam. We should have intent when we put on the tefillin. Kasav abach b'simil ches. This is a famous shita sabach. The bach in simil ches of Zayin. Tam lozer. He writes a reason why it's so critical that we have to have kavanaugh when we put on tefillin. Midiksiv, because it says in the pasuk, V'haya lecha la'ois al yadacha u'l'taytafais beineinecha. Why? Laman tiyeh Toras Hashem beficha, so that the Toras Hashem should be beficha, it should be in your mouths. Ki b'yod chazaka yitziacha Hashem miMitzrayim. Yoire, these psukim are showing us ki ikar ha-mitzvah v'kiyuma, the main point of the mitzvah of tefillin, and the main requirement to be mekayim the mitzvah of tefillin, is taluya b'kavana. It's talui in our kavana, in our thoughts. What does the pasuk say? Why? Lamantia Toras Hashem beficha, so that the Toras Hashem should be in your mouths. That's why we put on the tefillin. Because of a Pri Megadim, the Pri Megadim writes to become macabre. Nevertheless, even though we see that this is a critical requirement, b'di'eved, afilu im loy kived rak l'shem mitzvah bavad yotza. B'di'eved, if you put on the tefillin and you did not have these kavanas that are outlined by the macabre, and your only kavana was, I want to do the mitzvah of tefillin, b'di'eved you're yotza, but Rabbi say it's a b'di'eved. It's not l'chatchila. You want to put on tefillin l'chatchila, you want to be behind the mitzvah of tefillin l'chatchila. These are the things that you have to have in mind. You have to have in mind yichudai, And kidei l'shabed bazeh, to subjugate our neshamas and our lave to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Eis katan tezayin lahaniach arba parshiyos. V'yech daragim, there are those who have the minig machmazeh, because of this requirement. Likrois ha'arba parshiyos la'achar nochas tefillin. They say, if we have this requirement of tefillin, to have these things in mind, and also l'man tiyeh toras Hashem beficha, it should be in your mouths. So there's a minig to actually say, to recite the arba parshiyos of tefillin after you put on tefillin. Hainu, what are these 4 parshiyos? 2 parshas, one after the other in Parshas Boi, Kadesh and V'haya Kiviyacha, and those 2 you have to say right after you put on tefillin. The other 2 you don't have to. Why? Because you're going to say them anyway. The Shema V'haya Im Shemaya Balavachi Kairin Kol Yisrael B'Shas Kriya Shema. Right? You have 4 parshas. Shema and V'haya Im Shemaya you're going to say when you say Kriya Shema. The problem is, when are you going to say Kadesh and V'haya Kiviyacha? So the minig is, after you put on tefillin, say the parsha of Kadesh, say the parsha of V'haya Kiviyacha, and then later by Kriya Shema you'll say Shema and V'haya Im Shemaya. Ubetfillin de Rabbeinu Tam, and if you put on Rabbeinu Tam tefillin, Yoimar Kol Ha'arba Parshiyos, then there's a minig to recite all 4. Why? Because it's true that you already said Kadesh and V'haya Kiviyacha, and you said Shema, and you said V'haya Im Shemaya, but that was when you were wearing your Rashi tefillin. Now you should do it again when you're wearing your Rabbeinu Tam tefillin. And the Mishnah Berurah says, the minig yafahu, this is a nice minig to do, to make sure to recite the 4 parshas of tefillin when you wear tefillin. Now, on this concept of having kavanaugh when you do the mitzvah of tefillin, I always like to say over a vart from the Rishivas Atzal, from Rav Moshe Zechet Tzadik V'Kadosh L'Vracha. Rav Moshe once spoke by slichus before Rosh Hashanah, and he said, it's an interesting thing. We say in slichus all the time, Shema Keleinu Hashem Elokeinu, and in the beautiful paragraph of Shema Keleinu, we say, Al Tashlichenu Milfanecha. We ask the Rebbeinu Shalom, Al Tashlichenu Milfanecha. Do not chas v'chalila throw us away from before you. V'ruach kodshecha al tikach mimenu. And please don't take away your ruach hakodesh from us. So the Rishon Zatzal asked Akasha. He said, I don't understand. We take these words from Tehillim. These are words of David HaMelech's. But David HaMelech said them in the singular, not in the plural. David HaMelech said, Al tashlicheni milfanecha. Do not throw me away from before you. V'ruach kodshecha, and your ruach hakodesh al tikach mimeni. Do not take away from me. We say it in the plural. Now, we know that there's a golden rule that when you're mispal, you're not supposed to be mispal just for yourself. When you're mispal, you're supposed to bring the tzibur into your tefillas. So okay, so that's why we change it to a lashon rabim instead of a lashon yachid. But, asked Rav Moshe, he says, I don't understand. The whole tefillah doesn't seem to make sense to us. By David HaMelech could say, V'ruach kodshecha al tikach mimeni. David HaMelech could ask the Rebbeinu Shalom, please don't take your Ruach HaKodesh away from me. David HaMelech, we could assume, had Ruach HaKodesh. Do we have Ruach HaKodesh? I should come to the Rebbeinu Shalom and say, V'ruach kodshecha al tikach mimenu? Well, we have Ruach HaKodesh that we should ask the Rebbeinu Shalom not to take it away from us? Said Rav Moshe, yes. Yes. Every single one of us has Ruach HaKodesh. What does that mean? We are all Yidden. We're all Yisraelim. The Rebbeinu Shalom gave us a neshama, a chelik elikam mimal. And the Rebbeinu Shalom didn't only give us a neshama, the Rebbeinu Shalom gave each and every one of us Kedushas Yisrael. We have Kedushas Yisrael. We're B'nai Avram, Yitzchak, V'Yakov. You know what that is, Rabbi Isai? That's Ruach HaKodesh. When we talk about a Navi, we say, oh, you Ruach HaKodesh. David HaMelech, you Ruach HaKodesh. We also have Ruach HaKodesh. But the thing is that when we're born, we have a tiny, tiny bit of Ruach HaKodesh. We have the Pintel Yid. We have a little Ruach HaKodesh inside us. Our job in life is to make the Ruach HaKodesh grow. If we make the Ruach HaKodesh grow, we can make the Ruach HaKodesh grow to David HaMelech. We could have David HaMelech's Ruach HaKodesh. Or Chas v'Chalila, we could starve the Ruach HaKodesh. If we starve the Ruach HaKodesh, then we have to ask the Rebbeinu Shalom, Ruach Kodshech al tikach mimenu. Don't take it away from us. Don't Chas v'Chalila let it die. What's the food for the Ruach HaKodesh? How do we make the Ruach HaKodesh grow? Said Rav Moshe, the fuel and the food for Ruach HaKodesh is mitzvahs. When you do a mitzvah, that mitzvah goes into you. That mitzvah is mekadesh you. That mitzvah takes that Ruach HaKodesh and makes it grow. But, said Rav Moshe, sevenzach, it depends how you do a mitzvah. Do you do a kalta mitzvah, a cold mitzvah, or do you do a varma mitzvah? Do you do a warm mitzvah? What's the difference between a kalta mitzvah and a varma mitzvah? A kalta mitzvah is you go to shul, you take your tefillin, you make a bracha, you put them on. Boom, boom, boom. You daven. At the end of davening, you take them off, you wrap them up, you put them away. An hour later, you don't even remember for sure that you put on tefillin today. I mean, you know, you went to daven, but putting on the tefillin itself, how much of a roshim did it make? That's a kalta mitzvah. A varma mitzvah, that's a mitzvah with kavanaugh. You do a mitzvah with kavanaugh that you want to be mekayim the ratzon habayre. You do a mitzvah with kavanaugh that I'm doing it because this is what the Rebbeinu Shalom, the Borei Kol Olamim, wants me to do, and I'm doing it to serve Him. I'm doing avodas Hashem. That's a varma mitzvah. You put on tefillin and you have in mind yichudai v'achdusai yisparach shemai Hashem yochid u'miyuchad. You have in mind that shaloi hakayach v'amemshala b'el yonim uv'tachtonim lasis b'em kirtzainai. And you have in mind that you're being mishabed your neshama to Him, and you're being mishabed your lave to Him. That's a varma mitzvah that makes the Ruach HaKodesh grow. With that, the Rishiva Zatzal Onzel answered another kasha. He said like this, we have a kasha, we come every year, Yomim Noraim, and we ask the Rebbeinu Shalom, give us a good year. But then on Yom Kippur, we come and we say Vidui, and how many times are we saying Vidui on the same Averis that we said Vidui on the year before? So why should the Rebbeinu Shalom give you a good year? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you keep coming back with the same Averis. Why should the Rebbeinu Shalom give you a good year? Rav Moshe answered, he said, I'll tell you why. He said, we see that there's a kalta mitzvah and a varma mitzvah. There's also, chas v'chalila, a kalta avera and a varma avera. A kalta avera is somebody had a taiva, he couldn't withstand the Yetzirah. It was an extremely juicy piece of Lashon Hara. He couldn't resist. He went, he said a piece of Lashon Hara, never, chas v'chalila. Not condoning it. But we understand that he had a taiva, and the taiva drove him to the avera. Did he mean to be moirid chas v'chalila in the Rebbeinu Shalom? No. He fell through because of a taiva. Said Rav Moshe, that's a kalta avera. A varma avera. That's an avera where somebody's a moirid. Somebody is macabre, is bayrai. U'mechaven limroid boy. He wants to rebel against the Rebbeinu Shalom. He wants to defy the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's a varma avera. Said Rav Moshe, Baruch Hashem, we don't do varma averas. We only do kalta averas. But at the same time, we do varma mitzvahs. So therefore, our Ruach HaKodesh is going to grow. A Ruach HaTuma, a Ruach Ra, is not going to grow. If anything, maybe it'll stay the same, but it won't grow. But if the Ruach HaKodesh is growing, then Balkarcha will get better every year. And that's how we could ask the Rebbeinu Shalom for a good year. Okay, now let's go weiter. Let's go back into the Shulchan Aruch over here. And now we come to a very, very famous machlokes. The question of one bracha on tefillin or 2 brachas on tefillin. And the source for why we say Baruch Shem K'vayid Malchusay L'Olam Vayed after we make the bracha on the Shalosh. Says the macabre. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 lines down near the end of the line. V'yaniach shel yad tchila. First we put on the tefillin shel yad. V'yavarech lahaniach tefillin. And we make a bracha lahaniach tefillin. Right before we tighten the shel yad onto our arm, we make a bracha shekidishanu b'mitzvaysa v'tzivanu lahaniach tefillin. V'achakach yaniach shel rosh. And after we put on the tefillin shel yad, we put on the tefillin shel rosh. V'lo yivarich ki em bracha achas l'shteim. And says the macabre, only one bracha for both. You're putting on a shal yad and a shal rosh. Before you tighten the shal yad, a bracha has to be over l'asiyasan before you accomplish the mitzvah. So before you tighten the shal yad, you make a bracha. Asher kedushanim v'mitzvaysav v'tzivanu la'aniach tefillin. And that one bracha covers the shal yad and the shal rosh. And now you put on both, and you're done. That's the psak of the macabre. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Yud Zayin. First thing that the macabre said was that we put on the tefillin shal yad tchila. We put on the tefillin shal yad first. Why? Explains the Chavetz Chaim Diksiv, because it says in the pasuk, Ukeshartem la'ois al yodecha v'hadar, and only then does it say v'hayulu taitafais peinei necha. So you have to put on the tefillin shal yad first, and only then do you put on the tefillin shal rosh. Ois Katan Yud Ches v'yavarech. You make a bracha on putting on the shal yad v'tzayin loymar. What the macabre wants to say is kaidem hahiduk. When the words of the macabre are v'yaniach shal yad tchila, you put on the shal yad first, v'yavarich, and then you make a bracha on yach tefillin. You might read the macabre and say, okay, first I should put it on, and then I should make a bracha. He explains to Mishnah Berurah, no, ritzaynoi loymar. Again, remember what I always say. When the Chavetz Chaim says ritzaynoi loymar, it's because there's a question. What exactly did the macabre mean? There's a mistake that you could make here. Says the Chavetz Chaim, no, ritzaynoi loymar. What the macabre wants to say is, kaidem hahiduk. Before you tighten the shal yad on your arm, that's when you make the bracha ukidel kaman, and like we're going to learn the halacha later on. And the macabre said the bracha that you make is lihaniach tefillin. Says the Mishnah Berurah, halamid bedagesh. The lamid of tefillin is a lamid degusha. It's a lamid that has a pentala in it. It has a dot. It's a lamid with a dot. What's the significance of the lamid with the dot? I believe the significance is we find in the Yesodei Hadikduk that sometimes a dagesh shows as if the letter is a double letter. So it shows that the lamid should really be two lamids. And it comes from a lashon of pilel. It's a lashon of tefillah. It's a lashon of being mispalel. It's a lashon of judgment, pilulim, palilia. So the word tefillin, I guess, shares a shirish with these other words, and really it should have a double lamid. So the lamid degusha shows that it should be a double lamid. Okay, so here we had the psak of the macabre that to put on tefillin, there's only one bracha. You make a lanyach tefillin before you put on the shal yad, and that lanyach tefillin covers the shal yad and the shal rosh. Not so, says the Ramah. Says the Ramah 3 lines off the bottom. Hago. V'yeshoimrim, however, there are those that say, levarich al shal rosh al mitzvahs tefillin, that before you put on the shal rosh, you have to make a second bracha, the bracha of al mitzvahs tefillin. And says the Ramah, and this is true, afilu lo yihifsik bein tayim. Even if you're putting on the shal rosh immediately following the recitation of the lahanyach tefillin and the putting on of the shal yad, so mitam hefsik, there's no reason why the lahanyach tefillin can't cover the shal rosh. Still in all, you have to make another bracha of al mitzvahs tefillin on the putting on of the shal rosh. And continues the Ramah, and he says, "V'chein pashat haminig b'fnei Ashkenaz." This is the widespread minig in Bnei Ashkenaz. Shemavarchid shtei brachos, that they make both brachas, lahanyach before putting on the shal yad, and al mitzvahs before putting on the shal rosh. And says the Ramah, "V'toiv loymar tamid achar bracha shniya baruch shem kvoid malchusay loylam vayed." The Ramah says, since there is epis a suffix here, right? There's two different days. So there's epis a suffix, whether or not the bracha of our mitzvah tefillin is really necessary. And if it's not necessary, then chas v'chalila, it could be a bracha of atala, loisis Hashem hashav. So we should say baruch shem kvar malchusay leilam vayed after we say al mitzvah tefillin to take care of that possibility. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut l'chaf. The Ramah said there are those that say that we should make a second bracha before putting on the shalrosh, and that bracha is al mitzvahs. Says the Mishnah Berurah, bepatach tachas havov. You should have a patach under the vav al mitzvahs, shehu lashon yochid, which is a singular lashon. V'lo yoymar b'cholim. Don't say it with the cholim al mitzvahs tefillin, shehu lashon rabim. That would indicate plural. That would be as if you're saying, you're thanking the Rabbeinu Shalom al mitzvahs tefillin on the multiple mitzvahs of tefillin. So now, if you say al mitzvahs tefillin before you put on the shalrosh, you know what it looks like? It looks like you want the bracha of al mitzvahs to go on the shalyad and the shalrosh, and that means that you understand that there are two different mitzvahs. There's a mitzvah of the shalyad and there's a mitzvah of the shalrosh. Says the Chavetz Chaim, no, do not say al mitzvahs, lashon rabim. Say al mitzvahs on one mitzvah, because the bracha of al mitzvahs is not going back on the shalyad, it's going only on the shalrosh. Shaharei lo niskena bracha zu ki im l'tefillin shalrosh belvad, because this bracha of al mitzvahs is only going on one mitzvah, on the shalrosh. It's not going on the shalyad. So you have to say al mitzvahs, not al mitzvahs. K'moshe yispar b'siman chavav, like we're going to see soon in Siman Chavav Siv Beis. Kain hichriu roiv ha'achrayim. This is the conclusion of most achrayim. Deloy kitaz, not like the Taz. The Taz actually holds, well, we don't know for sure what the Taz holds. We know what the Taz brings down in a tshuva from his brother. The Taz had a brother, the Mahari Levi, and he brings down from his brother a long tshuva. He brings down the whole tshuva in the Taz, and he doesn't say that he agrees with it. He just says, Ha'takti, I'm bringing down a tshuva from my brother. And over there in that tshuva, the Mahari seems to write that really we should make two brachas on the shalyad and two brachas on the shalrosh. Each one should have two brachas. And therefore, the al mitzvahs goes back on the shalyad as well. So then you should say al mitzvahs, not al mitzvahs. Okay. But we do not like the Taz. So we don't paskin like the macabre. Svardim do paskin like the macabre. Svardim paskin like the macabre, and they make one bracha. Lahanyach fillin on both the shalyad and the shalrosh. Most of us, we paskin like the Ramah. We make a lahanyach on the shalyad, al mitzvahs on the shalrosh, and then we say Baruch Shem K'vayid Malchus Leilam Vayid. Now we have to be very careful when we say Baruch Shem K'vayid Malchus Leilam Vayid, and the Mishnah Berurah is going to speak about that. So first here in Ois Katan Chaf Aleph says the Mishnah Berurah V'Tov Loimar, why are you saying Baruch Shem K'vayid Malchus Leilam Vayid? Mishum Chashash Safik Bracha Levatala, because of the fear of the worry of a bracha Levatala. K'Basha Kasav B'Siman Reish Vav. But now explains the Chavetz Chaim, V'loisha who's Safik Gomor. There isn't a real Safik. It's not pshat that we have a real Safik, whether or not we have to make a bracha of al mitzvahs. No, we don't have a real Safik. Dim Kain, because if we did have a real Safik, Eich Yavarech Misafik Bracha Levatala. When we have a real Safik, when it comes to a bracha, the rule is Safik Bracha Levatala. Safik Brachas Lahakil. We go lekula and we don't require you to make the bracha. Why? Because we're machmir on loisis Hashem hashav. We don't want to chas v'shalom risk having you make a bracha levatala. So if it was a real suffix whether or not we should make the bracha of al mitzvahs fillin, then the halacha would be that we don't make it because suffix brachas lahakal. So the Mishnah Berurah explains it's not a real suffix. We would, if it was a real suffix, we wouldn't say make the bracha v'yismach al sheyoymar baruch shem k'vayid malchus leilam vayid and then rely on saying baruch shem k'vayid malchus leilam vayid to take away the problem of bracha levatala. Ella, rather, says the Chavetz Chaim, Ta'anan b'nei Ashkenaz sfir lan la'alacha kedas Rabbeinu Tam. We paskin la'alacha in this facet of Hilchos Tefillin. We paskin like the Rabbeinu Tam, who holds that we have to make two brachas, one on the shalyad and one on the shalrosh. Rak l'ravcha de milsa, but just because why not? La'itzi atzmeinu midei kol pitbuk, since there is an eitzah We know that there are Rishonim that disagree with the Rabbeinu Tam. There are Rishonim who hold that we should not make 2 brachas. So if you have a way to fix the problem of an ulai chash of a bracha levatala, you're able to say Baruch Shem Kvar Malchusay Leilavoid, so say it. So Noigin Loimer Baruch Shem Kvar Malchusay Leilavoid. But says the Chavetz Chaim, the Yizayer Ma'oid, you have to be very, very careful. Shaloi Loimar Baruch Shem, that you should not say Baruch Shem Kvar Malchusay Leilavoid. Rak Acher Sheyahadik Ashal Roish Al Roishoi Karoi. Make sure that you're Mekayim the mitzvah before you say Baruch Shem. Baruch Shem is a hefsik. You made a bracha and you're doing a mitzvah. You have to complete the mitzvah before you're mafsik between the bracha and the asiyas ha-mitzvah. So you made a bracha al mitzvah's fillin on putting on the shalrosh. You have to conclude putting on the shalrosh, which means you have to tighten it on. I think you should, even if you want to check if the tefillin are straight, if they're beinei necha, you should check before you say Baruch Shem. So make the bracha, put on the tefillin, tighten them, quickly do your thing, whatever you do with your finger or with a mirror or with your iPhone, whatever it is that you do your thing to make sure that the tefillin are straight, and then say Baruch Shem Kvar Malchusay Leilavoid. Because says the Chavetz Chaim, Dim Loikein, because if you don't make sure that the tefillin are on properly before you say Baruch Shem, you hefsik ben a bracha lahanacha. Now you created a hefsik between the bracha and the asiyas ha-mitzvah. And then you certainly made a bracha levatala, v'tzarech lachzor levarech. And you have to make the bracha over again, because you are mafsik between the bracha and the asiyah. V'ha'olam nichshalin bazeh. And the Chavetz Chaim says that the world is not careful about this. And I see this many times. People just go, they take their tefillin, Baruch Hashem L'Kedim Malachai Lo Shekhet Shon Zayis V'Tzivanu Al Mitzvah's tefillin. Baruch Shem Kvar Malchusay Leilavoid. What do you mean? The tefillin aren't even on yet. You can't say Baruch Shem. You aren't Mekayim the mitzvah yet. You can't be mafsik with Baruch Shem between the bracha and the kiyam mitzvah. So the Chavetz Chaim tells us that this is something that we have to be very careful about. We have to make sure to say Baruch Shem at the right point. Okay? Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The source of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rabbi Shem should send Yeshua Refuas Parnasa Sheduchim to all those in need. And we should be zeichet to see the Bias Kol Tzedek B'Heriv Yameinu Amen. Be well.